And where there were three, suddenly became two. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is indeed the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. I hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much as always for listening, for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you've had a very good weekend and you're ready to start this week, which of course is the first of two weekdays, periods of international fun and joy and laughter and excitement, and you know the rest. But I'm I don't know about you, but I am very grateful for this morning's international break starting. I think it comes at a good time. I think that it's a really good point to be at, and I think that James McNicholas's terminology that he used, where he said the cavalry is coming, I think that was a great way of putting it, because that is exactly what is on its way. The cavalry is coming for Arsenal, because after the international break, there is hope that a number of their players that have been out and injured are going to be returning to the squad, and Arsenal's team will be suddenly looking a hell of a lot stronger than it did just a couple of weeks, well, just a couple of days ago, really. And that is, I think, what is really important about this indeed. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. We've got Barry and Emmanuel and Jamil. Good morning to Just Saying and Natty Tom. Good morning to you, to Pam, to Carl, to Gary, to Blackshine and Norris. Good morning to Gary. We've got Aris Silky, we've got Freddie and Steve and Brian, we've got Amber Lee, we've got Grantley Poos and Canoe and Tom, Granddaddy Gooner Paul. We've got Rich, good morning, and Spearmint and Matt G, and plenty more of you guys and girls in the chat box as well. Thank you so much as always for making this a part of your morning routines. It is greatly appreciated. So do drop a like, do subscribe, and very much looking forward to getting into today's show, to discussing today's topics and then tackling some of your questions in part two. We are doing shows, of course, throughout the international break, other than at the weekend. I'll be taking Saturday and Sunday off, but from Monday to Fridays, both weeks, of course, we'll be kicking on with all of the latest Arsenal discussion and news. We'll likely have a phone-in show for you at some point as well. Just on a quick look at my schedule. Which day is my day off? Thursday? Friday. Friday's my day off. So I guess Friday we'll be doing maybe we do the phone-in show on Friday. So look out for that one. Right. Let's jump, shall we, into today's slides, and we begin where there is only one place to begin, and that is, of course, with Manchester City, comfortably victorious over Liverpool. I don't think really this was too much of a surprise. I don't think to anybody this should be much of a surprise, to be honest, because I don't know why it says 2-0, by the way. It was 3. Somehow managed to get a 2-0 picture. But it was 3-0 on the day, not 2. Must have taken an old photo, or must have taken the picture from half time when it was 2-0. But yes, it did indeed end with Manchester City winning 3-0 at the Etihad Stadium as they continued, very much impressively so, to secure maximum points and to bring home, and really to kind of condemn Liverpool very much being out of the title race in its entirety as things stand. You might say that that's a little bit over the top, a little bit premature. Some of you might think that you still can't count Liverpool out, but I, for one, am counting them out at the moment. I just don't think that we can really consider a team that are currently sitting 8th in the Premier League, and we'll talk about the table in just a second, in the title. They are 8 points behind Arsenal now. And City are just 4, it seems, as well. So, yes, big result. Goals from Jeremy Doku, Nico Gonzalez, and Erling Haaland. I think it was probably Jeremy Doku's best performance in a Manchester City shirt. So, if he is to start hitting form, obviously that's not ideal for Arsenal, because he's had a little bit of a choppy time, I think, at Man City. It's been up and down, and it's not exactly been plain sailing for him. But if he's starting to hit form, that's obviously a good thing for Manchester City. But Erling Haaland missed a penalty. And then, of course, there was the ruled out penalty. The ruled out goal, I should say, of Liverpool to equalise. Now, I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this. I personally, if it was from an Arsenal perspective, I would be utterly fuming, absolutely fuming if Arsenal saw a goal ruled out for what we saw ruled out yesterday. I would be apoplectic if Arsenal had of indeed seen a goal ruled out for that, because I don't think Donnarumma's getting anywhere near it. I don't think it matters where Robertson is standing. I think it matters that Robertson ducks and does everything he can to get out the way of the shot. I think that it is no doubt in my mind a goal that should stand. And whether or not that then changes the complexion of the game, we will never know. We have been robbed of knowing of whether or not that will take anything away from the result or would have changed anything. But what we do know is that once again, officiating in general has been utterly disgraceful over the course of this weekend, because as we know, Arsenal were denied a very clear and obvious penalty, in my opinion, in the opening minutes against Sunderland, while VAR couldn't intervene for the free kick that was given. Again, it's another big refereeing mistake. And now, of course, in arguably the most high-profile game of the season so far between Liverpool and Manchester City, we've seen another absolute clanger from VAR deciding to not rule out that goal. It did give the penalty that was not given on field. I don't think fans can really suggest there's any comparisons between the Gyökeres incident and the Jeremy Doku penalty incident. I don't think they're the same, because Donnarumma doesn't, from what I saw at least on the images, unless I've somehow been blind and missed it, didn't get any of the ball, but clearly did take part of Doku's foot in that moment. So it's just mad, really, to think that we are in this day and age and still moaning about referees. I will, of course, be producing a referee review, as I usually do, and haven't been able to do for a little while, but I will be doing today in the wake of the match over Sunderland at the weekend. So there will be a referee review out on the Football.London website around midday, so look out for that. But yes, big game yesterday, and Man City come out on top, which means, as I say, they have closed the gap to Arsenal to just 4 points. They have won 7, drawn 1, lost 3. Arsenal have won 8, drawn 2, lost 1. Man City have conceded 8. Arsenal have only conceded 5 at this point of the campaign. So it is still very much a title race between those two, but you have to go all the way down to 8th in the Premier League now to see where Liverpool sit. Chelsea sit 3rd on 20 points, 6 points behind Arsenal. Sunderland 7 points behind Arsenal, sitting in 4th. It really does make it a kind of a clear showing of how, we might in the end look at that Sunderland result as pretty darn good, as they sit 4th in the Premier League. Spurs, who drew with Manchester United, are sitting in 5th on 18 points, as are Aston Villa, as are Man United, as are Liverpool, as are Bournemouth. 5 teams currently sitting on 18 points after 11 games, and Crystal Palace in 10th on 17 points. There's only 9 points separating 1st and 10th. It is a pretty close table as it is right now and as it stands in the Premier League. And of course, that, I think, does rule Liverpool out at this point in time. At least I don't think we'll be talking about Liverpool as title challengers as of yet. And the eyes of Arsenal fans will be firmly on Manchester City and their fixtures and who they're playing and who Arsenal are playing. Of course, Arsenal have got the North London derby in their next game, a game which has been very tough for Arsenal, of course, and we haven't always come out victorious in, while Manchester City have to go to Newcastle. Now, Newcastle involved in yesterday's fixtures, just to run you through the results from the weekend and from Sunday, because we went through Saturday's results yesterday. Crystal Palace draw a 0-0 in their derby with Brighton. Aston Villa 4-0 winners over Bournemouth. Antoine Semenyo missing a penalty in that game at 2-0 for Villa to go on and absolutely smash Bournemouth. Villa are and have already beaten the likes of Manchester City this season, and Arsenal, of course, have got to go to Aston Villa very, very soon, and we'll be doing so in December. So that's going to be a very tough game for Arsenal as well. Brentford beat Newcastle 3-1, and Dan Burn getting sent off in that game. He will miss, therefore, the game against Manchester City. up next for them. Nottingham Forest beating Leeds. Important victory for Sean Dyche's side of Man City beating Liverpool 3-0. The games in the kind of that really do relate to Arsenal after the break. As mentioned, Newcastle hosting Man City on Saturday afternoon. Arsenal hosting Tottenham at 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon. And Liverpool, if you are still counting them, are home to Nottingham Forest. Chelsea, who are much closer, are away to Burnley. So a number of different games going on, and Aston Villa look like they are very much back right now and amongst the fold and amongst kind of the table, because they currently sit in 6th on 18 points. They've won 4 of their last 5. In fact, I think they've won a fair chunk of their last 10 games. I think they've managed to turn around their form after, losing their first 3 in a row. They very much have turned their season around, it seems. So, yes, Pep versus Mikel once again, and the revival of the old title race has indeed returned. There were some messages from some of Arsenal's players on their Instagram feeds in the wake of the draw at Sunderland. Of course, that late goal from Brian Broby breaking Arsenal hearts, costing them 2 points in the race. Bukayo Saka putting to his Instagram page, tough one to take yesterday. I want to thank all of our supporters that travelled so far. We appreciate you. See you all after the break. And Declan Rice posted perspective. An unbelievable month. Unlucky not to win yesterday, but that's football sometimes. More than ready to go after the break, with kind of a cheeks puffed out emoji and a love heart as well. So it seems the players are in a good space and they are determined. You know, I imagine they would have not even considered that a draw. I imagine there would have been feelings that this was just certainly as bad as a defeat, and they'll be using that as fuel, as momentum to go into the next round of fixtures after the international break. So I look forward to that, and look forward, of course, hopefully, at least, to seeing Arsenal get back to winning ways in a big way at home to Tottenham, of course, who have been very leaky defensively and, still a little bit threatening in attack, but Arsenal will be major favourites for that game at the Emirates after the international break. I think Arsenal might even round off the weekend, looking at those fixtures. They're the second to last game. There's Man United Everton on Monday of that match day weekend as well. But that's it's still to come. But we have 2 weeks until then, and there is hope, of course, that Arsenal will be in a stronger position. The problem that Arsenal have got is obviously they've got Spurs, then Bayern, then Chelsea, and you're reintroducing players that have been out injured for a long time. It's not the best games to reintroduce players. Could Arsenal play a behind closed doors friendly during this international break? That is something to think about. That is something to consider, is if indeed Arsenal might play a behind closed doors friendly today. So that, I think, is something to think about. And of course, we could see the likes of Gabriel Jesus, Kai Havertz, and all of the above also involved in that, if indeed the club deem that to be a smart use of their time. And it might be the case that they indeed intend to do that. You should intend to give yourself as much protection as you can give yourselves while being on the internet, particularly perhaps in a public Wi-Fi zone. Maybe you're abroad. Maybe you just need to have that extra layer of security and self-confidence. And you can do that with NordVPN. By going to nordvpn.com/Gooner, you can get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan with 4 months extra thrown in free, a 30-day money-back guarantee on top of that as well. If you're not happy with the service for whatever reason, perhaps you're just going away for a few days, well, utilize that. Be smart, be clever, be brainy, and get yourself the backing that you need while you happen to be on your tablet, your mobile, or your laptop, any of the devices that are supported by Nord, and of course in any of the territories that are supported by Nord. More information on the NordVPN website. But shield your data from snoopers and criminals, listen to your favourites abroad, and get that exclusive deal. That's nordvpn.com/Gooner. Make sure you go and check it out. Right, let's go to part 2, your questions and more, right after this. Right, this is part 2 of today's show, where we will be jumping into the chat box, tackling some of your questions. So Now is the time, if you'd be ever so kind, to throw those questions into the chat. And I'll do my best to answer as many of them as feasibly possible over the next probably 15 minutes. I'm heading into the office today, so I can't be spending too long chatting to you. So I need to be through as many of these as I can in a quick period of time. Right, let's go to Matt G's random question. But how does a player hand in a transfer request? Do they have to walk into the boss's office and tell them? Does it go via the management team? There you go. That's how it's done. But in all seriousness, I think it can be done a number of ways. I think a player could do it themselves. I think they could do it via their agent. I think they could go to a different member of the hierarchy. I think there are a number of ways. I imagine the most kind of common system would be agent tells the club. That would probably be the way that it works. Or you can go to Sociedad and just go training for a little bit, and that tends to do it. Apparently, that tends to work for some players. You just have to hop to Sociedad, go to the Basque Country, and train with your old club, and I think that sends the message. And clearly it works as well. Wilson says, good morning, Tom. Wilson's in the house. Good morning to you, mate. Omar says, morning, Tom. I was annoyed and still am about the result this weekend, mainly because I've gotten so used to winning. But that aside, only 3 top teams across the top 5 leagues won away from home this week. Yeah, very, very true. Fahim says, why can't Liverpool do anything right, Tom? I don't know. It's just been a terrible... I think there is a good argument, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. Has a club spent that volume of money in a single window in a worse way? Oh, wait. Has a club... Yeah, my recent memory, the most obvious candidate was the Gareth Bale money. And the other candidate is West Ham with the Declan Rice money. They're the 2 examples that are coming to my mind of how a team can spend money so badly and get such a bad return from that amount of money. Man United surely feature as well. I mean, having a look at Man United's transfers over the years and how much they've spent in certain windows on certain players, has there been a worse expenditure on players this summer? Benjamin Sesko and Buemo, Cunha, Lemons, Diego Leon. But again, I mean, some of those are quite good players, and Burmo's been a great signing. Cunha's a decent signing. Lemons looks a better keeper than they had. And Sesko, we don't know about his injury at the moment, but he could end up being a good player. But last summer, Agate, Delict, Zirkzee, Dorgu, Mazraoui, Lenny Yoro. I mean, that was a pretty bad spend overall. Season before that, Hoyland, Mount, Anana, Amrabat, Bayindir. Again, a pretty bad summer window. Season before that, Anthony, Casemiro, Alessandro Martinez, Tyrell Malacia. Man United are serially bad at spending. But I think 400 million to see you go from champions to sitting 8th after 11 games, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. I mean, Nathan reckons that Wirtz and Isak will come good, and they may do just that. But at the moment, it's going down as one of the worst spends as things stand right now. Shay says, to be honest, I'm still fuming about the women's draw against Chelsea more than the men's draw to Sunderland because our girls were robbed, whereas the men didn't really deserve to. I disagree on the second part. I think Arsenal did deserve to win the game, personally, with the amount of chances we created in the match. I mean, it was obviously a frustrating game, and one that could have really turned around Arsenal's WSL season. As it stands, of course, they still, I think, are firmly out of the race. They're still 6 points behind Man City. Chelsea, of course, on 20 points, but they're unbeaten still. It would have been nice if Arsenal would have won that game. It probably would have put them back into the fold. They would have been on 17 points at that point. But yeah, it was a frustrating one, but still, it's never easy to play that Chelsea side, not at all. Ryan says, Tom, do you think Arteta's decision to go to 5 at the back was the right call? Yes, it was. We did it against Brighton and won. We did it against Palace and won. It was the right call. And in 99% of games, clubs that are kind of seeing out a 1-goal lead will add an extra defender on and we'll see the game out. It was just unfortunate that it didn't happen this time. Tom says, Liverpool play the bottom 6 half, or Liverpool play 6 bottom half teams in the next 9 fixtures. Is it still too soon to rule them out? I mean, we'll see fully after those 9 games, but I will say that sitting where they sit right now and being 8 points behind Arsenal, it's very difficult to see. I mean, Arsenal should not be allowing that gap to close up. They really shouldn't be allowing that gap to close. Amira says, respectfully, Man City were much more entertaining when Trafford was in goal. Mark says, Tom, considering the depletion of our squad, the fact that we are still on top, I would say that we're doing just fine. What's your view on our season so far, and what do you predict going forwards? Obviously, I think so far Arsenal have done an unbelievable job. When you consider the players that have been out injured so far this season, it has been absolutely mad. I think I saw a tweet which showed all of the separate injuries that Arsenal have had to deal with at the start of this season. Let me see if I can find it. I'm sure I saw someone tweet out the full list of the amount of games that everybody has missed. Is Nkapie 6? I'm just trying to search now. No, I can't find it. Sorry. Yeah, it's not coming up. That's a shame. But there is somewhere a tweet which someone put out which has a full list of how many games missed, how many games each player has missed, because it's significant. So, yeah, if you can find it, let me know. But there is kind of a full list somewhere of the volume of games that each player has missed so far this season. But you think about Ben White, Gyökeres, Nkapie, Saka, Madueke, Ødegaard, Havertz, Jesus. It's just so many games. I think I'm probably even forgetting some, to be honest. Martinelli as well. Saliba has missed games. We've missed so many players for so many different extended periods of the season. So we've done very, very well. Very, very well based upon that at the beginning of this campaign. Rice says, Tom, I won't be mocking Liverpool again. We may not be able to measure the impact of the grief from the Jota passing. We are a great team and can enjoy Arsenal's success. I don't think at any point of anybody kind of dismissed that factor in its entirety. I've said before that I think it's very difficult to quantify the grief of that and to kind of, in any way kind of measure that in an impact, because grief can be a forever impact on somebody's life. It's impossible to quantify the impact of that. So it's not a case of mocking Liverpool. It's just football. It's just fans talking about teams. It's just fans looking at a rival that have been, and a fan base, of course, that have been very antagonistic. I think we can all agree, lacking in humility. And I think Arsenal fans have got a right, regardless of that, in some ways, to still just focus in on the football. But you have to think about it, and when you do a broader discussion about Liverpool, and that is obviously going to have an impact. But I still think the window that they've had has been one of the worst, most imbalanced windows, and one of the poorest ways to spend that volume of money on a squad that should have been strengthened in other ways, in a better way. AFC Till I Die says, I know City are more of a threat, but I can't stand most of the Liverpool fans that come into the pub I work in. So I really enjoyed seeing them lose yesterday. But he says, now Liverpool are in a Champions League race only now. They'd have to go on an insane run for anything else. Ben says, no team is winning the league having lost 5 games. It's difficult to see any team win the league. I mean, if we have a quick look at the tables of previous seasons, Liverpool won the league losing 4 games last season. You go back to the previous season, City won the league having lost just 3 games. I don't know, it used to be able to go back even further than that, but for some reason it's not letting me do that on there. Premier League, it should let me do it on the Premier League website. Let's go to 22-23. Man City did lose 5 games in 22-23. Arsenal lost 6. And City did win the league, but I'm assuming they lost the least of any side in the league that year. 21-22, City lost just 3 games. In 2021, City lost 6 games that season. Finished the campaign with 86 points. So it can happen. You can lose 5 or 6 games and win the league, but will it happen this season? Not sure. Difficult to be able to predict. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Oz says, seriously, as an Arsenal fan channel, I made a video late August cheering for Liverpool to get ESAC because I know it would mess up their team. Fair play. You've predicted that pretty darn well. SS says, rotates for Bayern game and go strong for Tottenham and Chelsea games. I would tend to agree with that. I think Arsenal should prioritise the Premier League games over the Bayern game. Definitely. Tom says, could Wirtz and Isak not come good because of how the Premier League has shifted this season to a more physical and pragmatic system stylistically? Small players are struggling to make an impact like they used to. Maybe. But I think Man City have still got a lot of diminutive technical players like Doku, like Bernardo Silva, like Nico Gonzalez. I think that these players are still, not exactly known for being the most physical in the world. Phil Foden, and they're still getting the job done. Yes, they've got Erling Haaland. Yes, they've got some likes of Rodri and Diaz, etc. But I think actually their more diminutive players are helping quite considerably. I think it gets worse for Liverpool as well, because you've got to think they're going to lose Salah during the international period of the African Cup of Nations. Some teams like Sunderland are going to be in big trouble for that. Sunderland are going to lose a lot of their squad for that period because they have a lot of AFCON players, and they're probably going to end up playing Liverpool and City when they lose those AFCON players. So that might be something to think about, actually, and how AFCON is going to affect a number of those particular games and when those players might be out. And it might be one to even think about. In fact, I might do a little bit of digging on that one today, because there are some big ramifications for Arsenal and others. Less so for Arsenal, but obviously more so for those other teams. Yaya says, beyond 6 points is not doable. At 8 points requires a 4-game swing. I don't see Arsenal losing or drawing 4 games close together, but maybe across the season, but not as dramatically as Liverpool have. Ryan says, Tom, do you think Arsenal should go into January's market for a forward? It very much depends on what the squad looks like in January. If we've got a fully fit squad, especially in the forward line, then probably not. But if we have got injuries that we're dealing with, then arguably, yes, we probably should. Mark says there's over 800 of you watching and there's only 140 likes. Support Tom and TGT and hit the like button. Great show as always. Thank you, Mark. And if you are watching, there are indeed over 800 of you listening right now. Thank you so much for tuning in. I understand there was less yesterday. People didn't really want to talk about the game that we didn't win. I empathise with you. I don't blame you for taking a break. But welcome back. And do drop a like on the video if you'd be ever so kind. Ryan says, with so many injuries, do you think that Luis Diaz's red card against PSG will tip the odds in the favour of Arsenal against Bayern? I mean, I don't know how many injuries that Bayern Munich are currently dealing with. Let's have a quick look, shall we, at how many injuries they've got. So, Alphonso Davies is out. Jamal Musiala is out. Luis Diaz is out. They're big players. But they're still going to have Kane, Gnabry, Elise. Lennart Karl is a really talented young player as well. I imagine could also get in the team. But that front three will be Kane, Gnabry, and Elise, I think, on the day. It's most likely to be that, I think. Did you see Luis Diaz's goal, by the way, this weekend? I mean, Arsenal are very blessed to not have to face him in the form that he's been in this season. What a goal that was. He scored this weekend. But elsewhere, they've got such depth defensively and in midfield as well. Pavlovic, Kimmich, Bischoff, Goretzka. And that Karl that I was been talking about as well. Then defensively, in particular, they've got such depth in so many areas. Konrad Limer's having a really, really strong season, but they've got Sasha Boy as well, who's linked to Arsenal, Stanisic, Guerrero, Jonathan Tah, Kim Min-jae, Upamecano, and of course Kimmich, as I mentioned as well, can also play in that back line with Manuel Neuer, still going strong at 39 years of age. It's amazing. Manuel Neuer was still in goal all those years ago when Arsenal used to play them every single season, it felt like. So, yeah, I think Arsenal and Bayern's going to have a good game, but I think Arsenal can afford to rotate a little bit, and we should rotate. We should prioritise the Premier League, and having won 4 out of 4 in the Champions League, we can afford not to win necessarily this game. We can afford to take a few more risks in this game and then focus on the Bruges game, on the Kairat game, and also the Inter Milan game more so. Maybe when more players are back from injury as well. Ian says the problem with dropping points versus Sunderland is now we have to win versus Spurs. I mean, we had to win against them anyway, Ian. I mean, it's not as simple as saying like we drew that game, so now there's more pressure on those. I get it that there is theoretically, but if we're being very honest with ourselves, we would have been equally as disappointed. Maybe slightly more with it being Spurs and Chelsea just from a fan rivalry standpoint, but you have to win the games. To win the league, you've got to win these games. Arsenal couldn't really afford to drop points against Chelsea or Spurs anyway. If we want to win the league, we've got to win as many games as possible. So every time we don't do that, it comes with a greater level of scrutiny. So I don't think it necessarily does put more pressure from a footballing standpoint because the pressure was at maximum anyway. Jabu says, saw some green shoots in Eze's game. His pressing is much better. I saw that as well. I think that's a fair point. He was pressing better. But he needs to find balance between over and under committing. I think Eze's best role in this Arsenal team is on the left. And I think when Odegaard is back, when Havertz is back, I think we'll see Eze play more on the left-hand side. And I think we should see him play more on the left-hand side as a result. I think that's where he's going to be best. I think when Odegaard returns, he returns to that number 10 role and Eze moves into those wider positions. Canoe says, Tom, do you have any levels of PTSD with the Man City title races? Well, of course, every Arsenal fan, I think, will be somewhat wary of what's happened in previous campaigns, especially alongside City, because they can just produce results, but they don't have the De Bruyne's anymore. Rodri isn't the same player that he is, but when you've got a player as good as Erling Haaland, you can pretty much win every game. Ryan says, with so many players injured, do you think Arsenal should go into the January window in the transfer market? We kind of touched on that, and the answer was it depends very much on what the squad is looking like then. Gary says, I honestly think PSG, if they weren't in a position of having major injuries, I think they would be beaten by Bayern, looking good, but they are playing in a league where nobody is near their level. I mean, both teams are of that kind of same ilk, aren't they? Bayern and PSG both play in leagues where they dominate those leagues, and it doesn't look like anyone will be challenging them. I know Bayer Leverkusen won it a couple of seasons ago, but if we're being honest now, Bayern are just not going to be challenged in that league. I just don't see it happening. I can't see a world in which they get challenged. It just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So, yeah, I don't think that is going to be the case. And both of them will have advantages in the later stages of those competitions as a result. John says, did you think Arsenal struggled with the long balls into the box from deep, from their keeper and free kicks, long throws? And could this be a template against us going forward? I mean, we struggled more so because of who Sunderland have. They have a lot of very physical players, a lot of tall players. So it depends on the opposition. It depends on who you are playing against. Do those teams have the ability to replicate that? It's very, very difficult. Jojo says, don't agree. Donnarumma has no time to assess if McAllister is offside there. Therefore, he has time to consider in 100th of a second whether he has to concentrate on the header or McAllister's. I mean, it's not McAllister, first of all. It was Robertson. But it's without a doubt for me, in no way impacting him. The keeper will go to dive to protect that shot. Robertson dives. He reacts late anyway. So it's not offside for me. John says Vlahovic is available in January on a pre-contract. No, thank you. Paul says, if a market opportunity is available in Jan, would we have the money to buy them? Potentially, but I think it might depend on other moves, maybe. But it depends on what type of move it is. Not mega expensive, but maybe like a low move or a cheaper deal. There could be some options. Tom says, what's your take on the spending after the big summer? I heard that we've got 100 million available, which feels like surprising. I hear that, but the problem is that January is going to be difficult. It might be that 100 million is more thought of as kind of reserve and in for next summer. January is always a really difficult time to do business. We know that. So it's much more likely that money gets spent in. I don't expect another 300 million. It's not, we haven't actually breached 300 million, but I don't expect a 300 million summer from Arsenal next year. I'd be very surprised if we did that. Ian says also there are knee injuries. It will take a month at least for these players to come back stronger. We need Victor back versus Spurs and Chelsea, and I'll be surprised if Jesus impacts our games. Gary says, Tom, if we beat Bayern, does that make us favourites for the Champions? I mean, Arsenal apparently are already favourites for the Champions League. It's worth pointing out. So you could argue that it doesn't really matter. If we lose to Bayern, I think they would, for me, become favourites. I think Bayern are absolutely a candidate for that competition, no doubt about it. Couple more before we wrap things up today. Arthur says, did you see how high City set the back line dealing with the free kick? Yeah, I mean, everyone's learning this season. It's kind of a season of evolution and transition and change of the game as well. So, yeah. Digital White Noise says, love the show. However, the slides have had issues with titles and image references. Yeah, I'm fully aware. It's the issues with doing a show at 8 a.m. in the morning. Ryan says, Tom, if Ballard would have elbowed Haaland like he did Marino, do you think the referee would have given the penalty? Who knows? Who knows? No idea. No idea. PTM says we might have to give Timber a new contract. I know Madrid is seeing those performances. Don't worry. There is talks underway and they're very confident about it. So I wouldn't worry at the moment. Sparkler says, do you think Gabriel Jesus is underrated, overrated, or fairly rated? I guess it depends who you speak to. Depends what the opinion is. I think Gabriel Jesus is a good player. I don't think he's a world-class player. And I don't think he's necessarily been able to kind of give enough of a showing, if you like, of himself to be able to say that he's world class in his most recent times. But when he joined Arsenal, there was an argument for it, but not now. I think he's just kind of fairly rated. People know he's a good player, but he's been stunted by injuries, and ultimately that means that we aren't going to see the best of him. And also, it's worth pointing out, as Soup says, that his end product always kind of did let him down. Is kind of like his lack of clinical finishing. His technical ability was always of a world-class level, but his finishing is what ultimately typically let him down. Canoe, the shirt that I'm wearing is the Norwegian national shirt with, of course, Martin Ødegaard on the back, obviously. Let's go to a couple more. Gent next door says, I disagree. Trossard has been excellent on the left. He's getting goals and assists. Eza holds the bench. I mean, I don't know what you're disagreeing with. I didn't say that Eza necessarily starts over Trossard right now. I just said that Eza, I think, is going to be better off the left, him specifically. But you're right. If Ødegaard comes back, Trossard for the moment isn't dropped immediately for Eza. Eza would be on the bench and would come off the bench to play in different positions. Hussein says, unless both Havertz and Gyökeres are out for the season when the January window opens, there's literally no need to sign anybody else. And as I kind of agree with what I said there, if we don't kind of add anybody else, it's because everybody is fit. But if we have injuries, then that's when we might think about it. Paul says, am I the only person who wasn't that impressed by City? So Liverpool didn't turn up and played like a bunch of strangers. Hard to judge City against such a poor level of opposition. I see what you're doing there, Paul. But I do see where there's some semblance of that. Liverpool weren't very good. It's probably worth pointing that out. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate your time. I hope you've had a really good start, or rather, I hope that you do have a really good start to your week, consider it's so early in the morning. But yeah, have a fantastic Monday, and I'll be back with you tomorrow morning. We'll be doing shows, of course, throughout the week and taking the weekend off. It is now the international break, so we should have some updates on fitness, on injuries, on all that good stuff. So yeah, look forward to that. Thank you so much as always for tuning in and listening, and I'll be back with you very soon. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.